Welcome back to Lesson 7 of the Java Comprehensive Guide. Today we are going to talk about classes and objects. This concept is by far the most core and fundamental concepts of Java. These two concepts make up Java as a whole. Java would not be what it is today without these, so naturally I would say this is probably the most important lesson. All the lessons are important, but if you have, I don't know, 20 minutes, watch this one because this one will pretty much change your way of looking at programming forever. In a good way, So Java is designed to be a object-oriented programming language. Now its paradigm mainly is object-oriented. So today you will learn what that means and how that will improve your programming flow. So let's get started. We're going to go on here to Eclipse. So last time we talked about enumerations, which in a sense are sort of getting into the classes here, but not really. Enumerations have to be constant values, for example, weekdays and weekends, and they must have contain only one value and cannot be changed. So we took a look at how we can do enumerations last class along with stacks. If you don't want to watch this video, please watch that video first because that video will have some predecessor information on how this all works. But if you are actually a newcomer and you have some prior programming experience and you want to learn object-oriented programming, well, this lesson is a good place to start because the previous lessons I covered all about, the loops, the if statements, those are all basic, but this is what makes Java unique of among other programming languages. So let us get started. So remember in the first lesson, I actually showed you what this will mean. I'll tell you in a later tutorial. Well, we're finally here. I am going to tell you what class means. So let us delete this enum here. And we are going to talk about all what this means, including the public static void and, the classes. So let us define a class. So a class is just a class of things. Just don't overthink it. It's like a group of things that you would put together. For example, cars. Let us define a car. So to define a class, all you have to do is type class. And then the name of the class, what do you want to be? I want to name it car. Is convention to name it capitalized. And every preceding word has to be capitalized too. For example, cars made in Germany. So these made in Germany or made in United States or made in Britain, they must be capitalized for the sake of ease of access. You don't have to. You can make it as wonky as possible, but this is hard to read and programmers will not like it. So we'll just name it capitalized. It's called pastel case, but I just call it capitalizing. So that is class. We have a car, and this is the group of cars. It will describe how cars work, but it doesn't actually contain the info for the car. That will be later, which is objects. But let's define a class first. So a class, as like in the main class here, can have pretty much everything you expect it to have. It can have functions, it can have variables, but now that we are in this OOP mindset, these aren't called functions anymore. You must be very surprised to hear that, but we are going to redefine this as methods. From now on, everything related to this, so functions, you want to transition it over and call it methods now. Variables can still stay as variables if they are in the function. But variables outside the function, or actually outside the method, because we have already changed here, should be called fields. So they are called fields. So make sure these are in your vocabulary set because that's what we're going to talk about for the rest of this course. Why? Because it is more intuitive to think about it as a method when you're putting it in the context of a class. Same thing with fields. Think about like a field, like a maybe a HTML field. So if you wanna just remember this, I'll leave that here. But now that we know, let us define some methods. First, we can define a constructor method. So I'm not gonna get too far ahead. Again, this video might be long, but I want you to understand the concepts clearly. So a constructor method contains nothing but the car. So you name it the class name. So you want to type public and then car. Or if you change this to something else, then you type something else here. So you want to type a car. And then let us define a method. So in theory, this is just a method. But if you notice, there isn't any return type. Because usually you would do, like for example, the main function, it returns void. What does the car return? Does it return, for example, void? Not really. It's a constructor. It's special. So that is why we don't have any return type here. So remember that. And also the constructor must be the same. So you'll know that. We can also add some parameters. It is still a method, of course. So let's add some parameters. So for example, we can add its name, the date it was the year it was manufactured. So in year, and let's add its mileage. So you can see where this is going. We're creating a new car with a certain amount of year that's manufactured, the name, and the mileage. So this is I call it the creator, but it's actually called constructor. We want to have proper terminology. So constructor method. So remember this. This is a special method that will create your objects, which we're going to talk about later. But right now, we can add some parameters. And if we take a look, we have the name, year, and mileage. So maybe we want to actually add some attributes like that. Because remember, right now, these are only the parameters of this constructor method. The class doesn't actually have these variables. They're contained in the method. If I don't remember talking about scope, but basically scope, if you remember from back in lesson 4, I believe, the for loops or the if statements, they're contained within scope. Sorry, that was lesson 3. But for example, if we have this variable, let's do a for loop. For int I equals 0, I less than 10, I plus plus. Say we have this here. Will I be accessed out here? Well, let's see. So if we do this system.out.print, we can print I in here. But if we copy and paste outside of the for loop, I will not be defined. See? Eclipse has this little X mark here that says, I can't find I. Why? There's clearly I, but it's defined within this for loop, not the whole function. So same thing with this constructor here. These variables are called variables because they are in the method. But we want to create some fields. So fields are outside. So to do that, we're just gonna, for the sake of today's video, we're gonna do public, and then we want to define the field with all caps nomenclature. So we will type all caps name. If it has more than one word, we want to do underscore. But all caps name, and then we just want to declare it. We don't want to define anything. So public, integer, year, public, integer, mileage. So this will distinguish between a field and a variable. Variables are lowercase, fields are uppercase. Just like that. Same thing with the enums. We talked about enums last time. Same thing, uppercase. So now that we have the attributes for the car, we can assign them to the the public fields. So why is this step necessary? Because remember, we can't access year outside of this constructor. So what happens if you have another function, for example, like public speed up? How would that work? You can't access the name, you can't access the year, you can't access the mileage. Actually, for the sake of this example, let's add a speed. So how would that work? Well, this method will guarantee you to access the fields from anywhere. So take a look at this. We can assign this here, and then now in a different function, the name variable will be out of scope, but this field can still go into this function here, or method. So I'm going to show you how to do this. So very simple. You want to call itself by writing this. It's a keyword. As you can see, it's yellow. Just write this. Now what is this referring to? Well, it's referring to the object that we'll create. So let's do this dot name. Remember, this is the class. Dot name equals name, because that's the parameter we're passing in. This dot mileage equals mileage. Actually, yeah, mileage. And this dot year equals year. This dot speed equals speed. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So that constructor method will put everything, the local variables, they're gonna write it back to this field here, and then we can manipulate the fields. So now, how do we do this constructor? So we have the class, we have the car, but how do we put it in here? Because remember, everything has to end up in this main function for it to run. Since lesson 1, I've been telling you that this is the key core component. Everything you ever do in Java will end up running here. Because remember, if this function is empty, whatever you did here, nothing will happen. So let us create an object. So to create an object, remember our enums here. Enums, we type the class name, or actually the enum name, but for this, we'll type the class name. So class name is car, and then let's type a new car called my BMW. So you want to create this new BMW car, and to do that, you want to type car my BMW equals new, the new keyword, and car. Now this is the constructor method, because you can see up here it takes in parameters name, year, mileage, and speed. So let's input some here. Name will be BMW. All right. And year, it will be manufactured in 2008. Mileage, it will be 15, a new car. And speed, or max speed, I should say. Let's just do speed. Let's go 60 kilometers. So that is how you define a constructor. Now, of course, it says it's not used yet, but we will use it very soon. So if you see, we can actually print some attributes here. We can just print the car speed by doing this. All you have to do is to type, don't type car, remember. Don't type car, because car is the class. My BMW is what you want to type, because that's the actual car you're referring to. So my BMW dot, let's do name. So you can see we're accessing the car, the field, and now when we run this, it should return BMW. And I'll tell you what everything is going on. So let's see. It says BMW, which that's what we put in. So here's what's going to happen. So when you create this new car here, BMW 2008, 15, and 60 are all going to feed into this constructor method. Again, special constructor method that takes in all this. you have a bunch of unused fields here that are just waiting to be assigned, and that's what we're doing here. So we're doing this dot name equals name. We're assigning everything here, and then when we get the name, so we do my BMW. Remember, my BMW is class's car, so we're looking into the name field, which you can see it's a string type, and then once we run it, this assigns it to the name, and then boom, we have BMW here. So as expected, if we do my BMW.speed, it will return 60 because the process I described there, constructor writes it to field, prints it back out. So that is 60. All right. Spend a lot of time on constructors. I know the video is a little bit long, but I want to make sure everything we get in there. So now we get the constructor out of the way. Let's take a look at how we can actually add some more methods, because right now this is a very boring class. It just basically tells you what you put in. How can we modify this? So to modify this, we can add some more methods, right? So that's how everything is modified. So now remember, this method will be a normal method because it's not constructor anymore. So we have to add our return types and stuff, but we're going to return speed. So here's how we're going to do it. We're going to do public integer because speed is an integer, and then we're going to do speed up. So we are going to speed the car up, and it's going to take in no parameters, or actually, yeah, no parameters. And then we can define some things here. We can define actually we don't need to define anything, so we can just do return. Remember from lesson 4, function return type. Return this. Again, our keyword is this because this is referring to the car class. This dot speed plus equals 5 or 4. That will work too. So what is this doing here? This is telling that we're taking, actually you might not have seen this shorthand, but what this is doing is the equivalent of saying this dot speed equals this dot speed plus 4. So that's shorthand because this is pretty ugly. We can all compress it down to this plus equals. So that's what that is, if you didn't know. So now that you know what this symbol means, you can see what this function is going with. It's taking the current speed, it's adding it by 4, and it's returning it. So when we run this, it will actually speed up by 4. So now the initial speed is 64. When we run it, it will become actually the initial speed is 60. When we run it, it becomes 64. So my BMW, remember, we're calling the object, not the class. So my BMW dot let's see here. We have speed up like that. So this will call the speed up method, and then once we run this, it will return 64. So let us run that, and boom, 64. So that is basically, yeah, that's just a method for you. Now you might wonder what these publics are. That will be covered in the next video, which is all about access modifiers. So if you don't know what access modifiers are, hang in there because we will get to there. Now, right now, this is pretty much the class that we can set up. Now, we can actually also, this isn't really the Java convention for setting up classes. I'll show you why. Because the Java convention, actually Oracle states that you should probably create a new file each time you have a class. So by cramming this, class in here, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just not that good. So that's why we're gonna create a new file. That way we can organize it better, and so when you hand off your work to other developers, they wouldn't be mad at you for sticking everything into one file. So let us create a new class. Eclipse has this awesome feature where you can create a new class instantaneously. let's name it class.java, and we will finish. And one thing to note, that whatever the class name is, it has to match the file name. So you can see, right now we will have class.java, but we want to change it to class.car. So one thing we will do is we will rename this to class.car, but you can see there's an error, because why? It says file is class.java. So we have to change this. If you look at the top left of my screen, and now car.java, you can see that it has changed the name. So now we define this like so, but here's the deal now. We can't really access this car because one thing, we don't know which file it is. So we'll have to import it. That's where the package system comes useful. So we do import tutorial.car. Now we can access everything in here, and it should work. Now let me see why it's not used here. The type car is already defined. But I don't think so. There we go. And you know, the reason why tutorial.car isn't used is because we're in the same package. It's not unnecessary. So I'll just remove it. But in a different package, you'll have to use import. But I don't know why Eclipse had an error. There clearly wasn't any error. Anyways, so that is how Oracle recommends you to create a class, which is create a new file. That way, if you look at the file, like the file project structure, you can see that it's much more organized with the file structure rather than just cramming every single thing into one class. So that is pretty much it. One more thing I will add, kind of foreshadowing next lesson, is you're gonna want to do this. Don't want your name, your fields public for a specific reason. And you might not even know what public means, but you will in the next class, because in the next class we will talk about access modifiers, what it means to have public, private, protected, final. Oh, one more thing. Just add it in today. Final. So final is a special thing. It states it's a constant, just like an enum. You know, remember our enum here? But final cannot be changed. So we can add a public final. Let's do, what property of the car can't be changed? Let's do color. We can't change the color, right? So we can't change, we can't change the color, so we'll have to define it here. And let's add our data type here. So string color equals red. So this final variable here, if you try to modify it, it will result in an error. Because if you think about it, it's final. Whatever color it is, it's final. No more changing it. So just wanted to add that in there because didn't really find any other place to put it, but final is a constant. Same thing as enums. You cannot change them. They remain this. So color will be red as long as the program exists. So that is a final. Usually finals are good for settings. For example, let's do settings difficulty. So we can do difficulty, and you can change it to like easy. You wouldn't want to change difficulty of a game mid-round, right? So that is basically final, and in fact that is basically class. So once we can also print finals just as how we can print everything else, because it is remember, it's still a field. So we do difficulty. Yep, and then when we run it, you see it is easy. So that is it for today's lesson. Very, very important concepts we need to cover in the next episode. But this episode also very important. We talked about constructors, we talked about fields, we talked about how objects and classes work. In the next few classes, it's all going to be based off of this video. So just remember that. We're going to talk about how you can extend your classes to greater functionality with inheritance and polymorphism. And so until then, I hope you stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.